Let's make this quilted infant hoodie. It is Christmas Eve and I forgot to do a Christmas present. I lost my sojo, I moved my quilting room around, and this particular thing got moved and buried and it was not in my eyesight, and so I forgot about it. I wanted to make a super cute quilted little hoodie to go on like the back of a hoodie for my baby niece. I'm thinking a log cabin block, super colorful like a rainbow. And because she's small, I mean, she's like maybe 18 months old, I don't want to do anything big. So I think I'm gonna have to foundation paper piece this so it's kind of thin. You don't always need patterns for things. You can make your own. How do you think I became a pattern designer? I'm sure there's tons of free ones that you can find on Pinterest. You can shrink them down to the size that you want, print them out at home, no big deal. I want my strips that go around the log cabin to be about 1 inch. So that's the size that I'm going to make for mine. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do 7 by 7, and that way by the time I fold the edges under and I lose that 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, it'll be 6.5 by 6.5. Okay, 7 inches, and I drew some squared lines at 3.5 just to make sure I can keep everything straight. Then we line everything up and we draw a 1 inch square to start with. You basically start with a 1 inch square in the middle, and then you do a 1 inch square to the side, and then you do a rectangle beneath them, a rectangle to the side, a rectangle on top, a rectangle to the side, and you basically just keep going around and around and around and around and around. And then I've squiggled off these because those are my lines that I did to square up my paper. But then when you get to the end, you're just gonna do a strip of fabric all the way like this to end up your log cabin. Okay, let's get going. Okay, now I'm off on the hunt because out here, I like to keep my scraps in a bucket like this. And these are 2.5 inch widths that I will save when I am done with a project. I will, if I have any long strips, I'll save them in 2.5 inch widths. And that way I have a bunch of these that I can just kind of do like a jelly roll race kind of quilt or something like that. So I have a bunch of these that I can pull from. So let's grab this whole thing and head back in there. I normally will sew at a 2, but foundation paper piecing, I like to sew about a 1. That way it's like really easy to tear the paper away. On the back of your paper, put a little dab of glue stick and then put your first color right side up. Log cabins are traditionally red in the middle, but you can do whatever. So I'm gonna start with red. All right, I'm gonna fold this back and I'm going to press it along the next side because I'm gonna be sewing on this side. I'm gonna cut my 1/4 inch right there. Found a little bit of green. We're gonna lay those right sides together. You can hold it up to your window if you need to know where to place it exactly. And then when you go to sew it, you're gonna put your grid right side up so you can see the lines. And then we're gonna sew right here because when we flip our fabric right side out, it's gonna be this grid right here. See, so we sewed right there in between our first 2 boxes. When we flip it over, it looks like that. And then we're gonna flip these over, and you can press this with an iron, or you can finger press or use a seam roller, whatever. That's our first 2 boxes. All right, next we're gonna be sewing this one. So we need to get rid of any extra fabric that's hanging over here except for our 1/4 inch seam. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold it back on this line right here. So let's do that. See this? And then we can cut off this 1/4 inch seam. Just like that, doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're gonna find another fabric. Let's use some of this pink. And then we can place it along that 1/4 inch seam that we just did. And then we'll flip it over and we're going to sew along there. Okay, so these were our first 2 blocks here. We just sewed here for our 3rd block. So if we flip it over, those were our first 2 blocks. Now we've sewn our 3rd block like this. Okay, so finger press that, and then we flip it over. So we've done these 2, the 3rd, now we're doing the 4th. So again, we're gonna fold this up, and we're gonna press it so we can cut that off. All right, so we've done 2, 3, and now we're ready for a 4th right here. I have some blue sitting here. This is gonna be our fourth right here. So we're gonna flip it over. This is gonna be our fourth right here. All right, we fold that over. Now it can be helpful to number them. So if you number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you remember just to keep going in a circle, you should be okay. I'm gonna keep going and then I'll show you when I'm all done. Okay, here's my finished block. I'm gonna give it a good press and trim. All right, she's trimmed. Now we get to pull the paper off. Should be pretty easy. Now I wanna have a clean edge here, so I'm turning it under 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just using my little glue stick again and running a little bead of it along the edge and turning it under and then setting it with the heat from my iron. A little dab of glue and then pressing it down. And then we set it with the heat. So then it's time for placement. So again, I just kind of lined it up and I'm using a good amount of glue stick and my iron and pressing it into place after I've lined it up really carefully. Then we let it cool. I'm gonna go in with some pins. I'm gonna start quilting in the center and I'm gonna go around and then I'll do a decorative stitch all around the edge. And here's the final result. I did some easy stitching here around the middle and then a blanket stitch around the end. I can't wait to show her.